All right, we are recording.
All right, I'll kick it right off to you, Dan. Let's go to the beginning here.
Sure. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you guys are coming from. As Mir said, hopefully you have a cup of coffee, cup of tea, or beer sitting next to you. Wanted to start off with some announcements before we get started here. So, ArcGIS Pro 3.1 was released earlier this year. I want to say it was in February. Apologies for not having the exact date on that, but wanted to let you know that on April 6th, 3.1.1 patch was released. The big thing that is in that patch that we encourage everybody to load up is that bug 153703 high random access memory consumption. So there was a memory leak, and this fixes that issue. And you should notice a improvement when you're working with the feature services. So I encourage you to go out there and install that particular patch. Also in there is a fix for the export ArcMap traverse file. So there was an issue where when we were exporting the traverse file, it wasn't keeping the bearings that were in the traverse window, so that's been corrected. And then there was also an issue with duplicate parcels that's been corrected. Enterprise 11.1 was scheduled to be released at the end of March. That got pushed back a bit. That is now scheduled to be released April 20th. So I believe that is next Thursday. And I have not heard anything contrary to that. So we should see that actually come out on the 20th. Also, just to let you know that 10.9.1 Enterprise, 11.1 are all Parcel Fabric version 5 and compatible with ArcGIS Pro 2.9, 3, and 3.1. So just let you know. And then also 10.7.1 has been deprecated, 2.4, that's already been deprecated, just so that you know. I hope nobody's still on that version. I hope you guys have moved on since then. Next slide, Tim. Just give you some more announcements on where you might be able to find us. Next event coming up, April 18th and 19th, which is next week at the Esri Southeast User Conference. We are having a Parcel Fabric pre-conference seminar. So you can register for that and possibly attend. Then in the end of May, first part of June, we'll be at the FIG Working Week in Orlando. And then, of course, at the user conference in San Diego, July 10th through 14th. Next slide, Tim. And at the user conference, we have a number of sessions happening on Parcel Fabric. We have a session on migrating and administrating parcels. We have another one on introduction to record-driven workflow, one on introduction to quality-driven workflows. We have a demo theater presentation on data management. And then we also have our land record special interest group, or the SIG, which is always fun. So I encourage you to put these on your schedule and hope to see you guys in San Diego. And besides these that are being done by the Parcel Fabric team, there are a number of other sessions out there being done by business partners and users. So I encourage you to look at the schedule and see what others are also presenting. Next slide, Tim. Just to let you know, today we're doing the create custom Parcel Fabric add-ins using the ArcGIS Pro Net SDK. We have another one scheduled in May, Let's Kogo, for everybody that loves to Kogo. We have another one scheduled in June, Parcel Alignment, and then November 14th, the use of Arcade with the Parcel Fabric. I know that we also have plans to put a couple more in here, meetups, in between those dates, and hopefully we're going to have some user presentations come up as well. So stay tuned. We have quite a few meetups already scheduled and planned for this year. With that, I think we're going to turn it over to Tim and Ken, but I think we want to kick off with some polls. Is that right, Namir?
Yeah, just to know who the audience is today. So usually we let Jason do the polls, but today I'm going to launch the polls. So you should see the poll questions now. And think you can start voting on that. Can you see the polls?
I do see it, Amir. It's asking in what SDKs, APIs are your custom apps or scripts written in?
Exactly. And I can see, can you see the results?
Not yet.
So that's where Jason
see it on the
did
side.
fix.
Yeah, you can see it on the side. And,
Yeah, I can see it on the side
C#. Yep.
I'm going to close that one, and maybe we'll be able to see it. If not,
there's a little share to the top right, but
little share. Yep, here it is. So here are the results. We see a majority, 57% here with C#. So you're in the right place. Probably many of you do both, and Python as well. And I guess Python exists in both the ArcGIS Python API as well as the ArcPy in ArcGIS Pro. So that was the first question to warm up. I'm gonna now try to go to the next question. And did you develop add-ins in ArcMap? Just to know how many of you are coming from ArcMap. And so far we see. Give you 2 more seconds. I'm gonna close that. Share. You can see that 2/3 did ArcMap add-ins development in ArcObjects. Another question is, are you currently using ArcGIS Pro SDK add-ins with Parcel Fabric already or not? So when did we release the SDK for Parcel Fabric? I think it was 3.0, right, Tim, or 3.1? No, sorry. No, it was, sorry.
No, it was like
2.5, 2.6.
2.6, something like that.
Yeah. So I'm going to close that and share, and we can see now that about 1/3 of you are already developing in the ArcGIS Pro SDK for Parcel Fabric, and that's good. And you're in the right place today. If you have developed ArcGIS Pro add-ins, so for those that already do, what do you really use it for? Is it integration with third-party business systems? Is it more about ingesting other data formats like ETL from CAD? Is it about the editing workflows and data entry? Or is it something other that we don't know about? So I'm going to close it in 3, 2, 1, and you can select multiple, of course, and share the results. So you can see about 1/4 about integration, and mostly about data entry and editing workflow. So this is something that will be interesting for us to know what type of customizations you are doing. Is it something that's very specific to your organization, or something that can make its way into the core software? So you don't have
for the 12%, maybe people can just put some info in the chats or the questions just to give us some ideas of what those are.
Yeah, to let us know what other could be. So if you had any customization in ArcMap, do you think that you need to develop less in ArcGIS Pro and rely more on configuration? Do you think it's going to be the same level of customization that you had in ArcMap that you're going to basically migrate into ArcGIS Pro? Or do you think that ArcGIS Pro actually needs more customization that you used to have in ArcMap? So it's kind of curiosity on our side. And I'm going to close it and share the results. So majority of you think they're going to develop less in ArcGIS Pro compared to ArcMap. And the other 50%, it's the same or even more. So the more, again, is interesting to us to know why you think you need to do more customization in ArcGIS Pro. That tells us basically that something is missing in the core software that we need to develop. And the last question, thank you for your patience, is which APIs for Parcel Fabric should we put most our effort in? Is it the .NET SDK? And I know you're biased because this is for .NET developers. Is it Python APIs, whether it's the ArcGIS Pro Enterprise or the ArcPy in ArcGIS Pro? Is it on the REST API, JavaScript, or arcade expression language, which is not really an API, but is pretty powerful. So I think it's multiple answers here. You don't have to select one, you can select multiple. And I'll close it in 4, 3, 2, 1, and share the results with everybody. And we, of course, we are biased in this one, but we expected .NET SDK, and we have been putting a lot of effort and will continue to do so. But we also see some strong representation for Python and JavaScript. So, so I guess we have to put our effort in everything. And with that, I'm going to hide this and head it back to Tim and Ken for this session. Thank you.
Cool, great, thanks, Amir. So this session, the meetup we're going to do today is we're going to try to cover some of the things that are newer, that we've covered a lot of these items, a lot of the kind of the core basic items like the data model and some of the basics of workflows and using the API to do that in prior meetups, and those are actually out there already recorded. So for this one, we're going to try to do some of the newer things that we haven't really spent a lot of time on. And it's the next slide here. And and that would be broken into 2 separate parts. Ken is mostly going to handle the first part, and I'm going to do the second part. And it's, as you would have already seen in the description, about automating the creation of the Parcel Fabric Record, using versions, and reconciling and posting those versions. And then also some new functionality and some new concepts for navigating parcel boundary lines and creating custom tools to generate parcel reports, or doing specific unique editing workflows that you might have in your organization that aren't necessarily going to be available in the core software. So for the branch versioning parcel record creation, the overview of that is I'm going to talk a bit about multi-use and single-user environments, parcel edit operations, parcel edit extension methods, and then Ken will do a demo that'll cover those topics. And then the second part is the parcel edge concepts and navigating between the elements of a parcel, lines, boundary lines, and points, and specifically getting a clockwise ordered sequence of lines and seeing why that's important and why we need to be able to do that. And then demo of that part as well. So the Parcel API in Pro has 2 key functional areas. The first is the parcel layer that allows us to access the data. And the second is the edit operations framework. The parcel data model has a predefined and well-known information model. Since you're here learning how to develop on it, I'm sure you're very familiar with the data model for the Parcel Fabric. And because we have this predefined and well-known information model, it means that for the parcel editing, the API can leverage it to achieve the expected parcel behavior, because we know certain fields are going to be there, and we know what we need to do, such as, for example, creation of parcel lineage. So there's some fairly coarse-grained functions that'll do a lot of that work under the hood for you. And then in terms of the editing of the parcels, the Parcel API just extends the standard framework that's used for edit operations. Parcel Fabric can be used in both a single-use as well as a multi-use environment. When the parcel layer is used to get the fabric data, for the multi-user case, it's being accessed via published feature services. and it's using the branch versioning model. Now, though the Parcel API is designed around this SOA or this services-oriented architecture, those same layers can also be used to point to and work with a fabric created and stored in a file geodatabase. And so that would be a single-use model. And since the fabric as stored in the file geodatabase has the same schema, for the most part, the same API coding patterns apply for the single use environment as for the multi-use environment. There are some exceptions to this. For example, in the multi-use environment, you need to make sure that you're editing on a version and not editing directly on default. And Ken will cover this in more detail in this demo. Taking a look at this slide, this is what you would see when attending the editing team's SDK workshops at the Dev Summit. This is the workflow for you as a programmer. You would initially instantiate a new edit operation, specify that particular edit for that operation, and then execute the operation. If we just tag the word parcel on the front before the word edit in each of these cases, this is how the Parcel Fabric API works. It's just leveraging the existing framework and expanding on it. And so here's a code snippet example of that. In this case, we're instantiating the edit operation with the name property as the string create parcel seeds. And that string will appear in the UI in the undo redo stack. And then the other property here is the select new features. This is set to true. So for this code, the new features are parcel seeds. And so when the operation completes, they'll show up selected in Pro. And then we get down to the function where we're calling. It's just one of the new Parcel API functions, create parcel seeds by record, actually not new anymore. And you can see here that the function takes a parcel layer as a first parameter and the GUID value for the record object. That second parameter, the GUID there, means that only the closed loops of lines that are within that particular record will be used to create the seeds. And so here's a full list of all the Parcel API related editing functions. We won't be going into each of these in detail, but we'll just kind of show the basics of how to, or the pattern of how to do it. And that would, you'd be able to use any of these functions in the same way. And then for the parcel layer accessing the data through the extension methods, here's the list of those. And this helps us access the fabric data. And we'll be featuring just a few of these in the session. And then this in particular, the get sequence parcel edge info async, this extension method, I'll be covering this in more detail and is the focus of the second part of this session. And that was introduced new at 3.0. And here's another couple examples of the extension methods on the parcel layer. These set and get the active record. We presume, of course, that you're already familiar with the Fabric data model, and so you know what a parcel record is, but what does it mean to set and get the active record? It's just a term that's applied in the context of the Pro client. So in the Pro client, when there's a parcel layer in the map, the UI shows this heads-up display indicated here with in the middle of the orange rectangle there. And that's indicating what the active record is. In this case, it's a record called SB12-32. So any new data that is created when this record is active will be represented and associated with this record. And that's done through the created by record field that stores the GUID. And you'll see more about the record in Ken's demo coming up soon. So here's that full list again of the editing related functions for the Parcel API. They are parcel specific and pretty coarse grained, but you're not limited to working only with these. You can get a lot finer grained, and as programmers, it's not a closed system, so you have complete access to all of the other API outside of these parcel-specific API functions. So meaning the parcel layer and the parcel editing API is not the only way that you can access and edit the data. And then the active record plays a role in parcel behavior. So that's the distinction. It is integrated with editing. So if you have the active record set, even using some of the standard editing API, will also assign the GUID to those new features if they're going into the Parcel Fabric. So there is also that level of integration. And with that, we're going to hand it over to Ken for the demo using branch versioning and automating record creation. So I will stop sharing here. And Ken, hopefully you can share.
Yeah, 1 second. Let me make sure I got the right screen here. The Pro open?
Yep. See it.
Cool. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. So we jump into some record-driven workflows with some different things that we can do to help us along. So as Tim mentioned, the Parcel Fabric Record is the key to unlocking the parcel-specific behavior in Pro and a custom application in Pro. So the parcel record will be present in just about every Parcel Fabric edit operation. Now, what's the difference between using the SDK to create the record versus just using what's available in Pro with managed records? Well, in this case, we'll see how to pull record information from an external source and use that data to populate the new records attributes. And then when we're working in a feature service, we can also automatically create a branch version to contain those edits. So in this demo, we'll go through creating a new record, populating its attributes, and then we'll add a control point to take a look at the relationship between the features we create in the fabric and the parcel record. And then we'll see that it's all going to be done through a branch version. It'll persist throughout the workflow. So we'll go ahead and start by creating a record. The first thing we want to do is check our license level, make sure we're at standard or above. Then we're going to go into the map, and we're going to get all of the layers from the map as a flattened list. That way it takes everything out of its group layers. And we're going to go look for the first layer that's a type parcel layer. With ArcGIS Pro and the Parcel Fabric, there can only be one parcel layer in the map. So using first or default is safe there. Go through, stop here. Yeah, we just want to make sure our parcel layer is in the map, and we'll step into here to take a look at our versioning stuff. So I'm going to run this function here, create and change edit version. This is the function that I created here. So it's going to jump in, it's going to get the geodatabase, or actually the data store of the Parcel Fabric that's in there. And we could do this one of two ways. If we go up here to this function, we can go directly to the parcel layer and get the data store from there, or we could take any one of the participating feature classes and get the Parcel Fabric's data store. I'm doing that here. I'm getting the records layer. I'm going to pull the table out of that and then find its controller data set, which is the Parcel Fabric that we're looking for. And then the controller data set will give me its data store, which is essentially the geodatabase. And you'll see here, continue on. I'm going to cast that database, cast that data store as a geodatabase. And then here comes the fun part. So now we have the geodatabase. We can see if versioning is supported. In this case, I'm using a feature service fabric, so that will be true. And if that's true, we get the version manager object, and from there we can start accessing and updating versions, branch versions. So I'll check the current version, and I'm going to make sure that it's not in default. If it's not in default, we'll move on. But if the map is set in the default version, we want to go ahead and create a new version to contain our edits. So we'll jump down here. So I'll get the create a version description. I'm going to give my new version a name. I just have an auto-generated name, keep it unique. Yeah, the description and then its access type. We'll create that branch version. Then we'll go back and get that version again from the version manager. And then we'll jump back to the map and tell the map to change the version from the current one, which is default, to this new branch version that we created. Little pop-up up here lets me know that we've created a new branch version and its name. And so now we can continue on creating the record. I just have this little dialog here. I'm going to give my record a new name. And so I won't spend a whole lot of time on this because it's not necessarily a Pro SDK or a Parcel Fabric specific thing, but I wanted to show that I can go into here and query a database using that record name. And if I find a row that contains that record name, I'll pull the attributes or the values from that so I can populate my new record. So in this case, I'm going to search for Meetup 2023, and if the record matches that, I'll pull out the name, the recorded date, and the surveyor. So now we can see our record attributes. I now have a dictionary of 3 attributes, which is the name, the recorded date, and the surveyor name. So now it's time to create the records layer, or to access the records layer, I should say. We'll get that from our directly from the parcel layers. Well, it's one of those extension methods that Tim mentioned is getting the records layer. So get records layer async. We'll create a new edit operation. In this case, I'm going to give the name create fabric record, which we'll see in the undo stack. We'll create that edit operation and then we'll execute it. And if that executes successfully, we'll call the other extension method to set the active record in the map here. And then I don't know why I put that there. We don't need it again. So we'll continue on and we'll see our new record is set here. And if we go ahead and look at the info from the record, we'll see it's Meetup 23 and we have the global ID available. If you take a look at its attributes here, right one, yep. So we can see we have the recorded date was populated and the surveyor name was populated in the record. So we can go a little bit further to kind of dig into what the record does, and we can create a control point. We'll just add a single point to the map here. A lot of the same stuff. We'll go ahead and kind of skip through that. We'll do this a few times, so let's stop breaking here. Continue on to make sure that, because we're doing an edit operation, we want to make sure every time that we're not editing default. So now I'm here adding a control point. All right, anyway. Same thing, check the license level, get the Parcel Fabric layer, get the active record to make sure the record's set, because we don't want to make a Parcel Fabric edit without that record set, or in most cases we don't. We'll get access to the point layer, and then we'll fill out some attributes, because I might want to be specific, especially if I'm making a control point. I might want to set the adjustment constraint and so on if it's going to participate in an adjustment somehow. We'll set the isFix to 1 to specify it's going to be a control point. It'll be symbolized as a control point. Or we could also just go through the editing template and create a control point directly. And you'll see a common theme here. We'll create an edit operation. We'll execute the edit operation. It's here. And if we take a look at the attributes of this control point, we'll see it automatically got its created by record. And this record here ends in BC5B. And if we look again at the parcel record info, we'll see we have the same GUID attached. So now I know that every object that I create or every feature that I create with the record set is going to have its lineage maintained. So let me undo that particular point. So we'll just continue on with this record-driven workflow concept. So in this scenario, let's imagine a new deed was created and the surveyor provided some line work representing new parcel boundaries. In this case, I'm just using line features from a FileView database, but this could be a CAD drawing, a shapefile, STE data, so any valid line feature class. We have our record already set. I'm going to make sure that I select all the features that I want to bring into the fabric. And then what I want to do is I want to copy those lines into the tax parcel type. So we'll do this with a copy lines to function here. So I want to get the source feature layer, and that's the lines of the features I want to copy. I'll generate or I'll figure out the object IDs for those, and I want the destination polygon and the destination line layer, which is essentially the parcel type of the before I want to copy them into. So we'll get all the line layers, and we'll do the versioning stuff here. We'll skip over that. Create the edit operation, and then in this case, we're going to see a working with a parcel edit token. And this is going to allow me to do is kind of intercept those edits that I create. So when I run copy lines 2, I'm bringing in lines into my lines feature class, and that's an edit. So I might want to do something with, extra with those, like update the attributes or do some other kind of calculation with those features that I've just inserted into the table. So we'll do that with the parcel edit token, and we'll execute our copy line features to parcel type function here with our source layers, the OIDs that we gathered, and then the 2 feature classes of my parcel type. So that's going to copy those in. And so now I have my parcel edit token, and that parcel edit token allows me to see all the features that were created. So I have a selection set of created features and any features that were modified as well. In this case, I've just inserted features, so I won't have anything modified. So now that I have that selection set, I can loop through all of those and do some other kind of calculation. I can get each individual line. I'm not going to do that here. I'll just print out a report of all the features that we brought in to our parcel type. Continue on. We'll see I have 9 new tax features, which are polygons, and 27 new lines. And the reason I got the polygon features is because when I ran create our copy lines to parcel type, seeds were automatically created wherever a closed loop was found. So this is done automatically by the tool out of the box, and with the custom applications, the developer doesn't have to worry about creating the seeds during this portion here. All right, so let me turn off my the lines. So we now have lines, our parcel lines here, and we have our seeds created. So now that we have this set, what we want to do is you want to build those parcel seeds into full parcels. So build can be run in 2 ways. We can build by the entire map extent, or we can build only the features that are participating in this parcel record. And that's what we'll do here. So I'll go to build the parcels. I'll set up the build edit operation. Make sure again that we have the active record. Get access to the parcel layers, because I'm going to need to, in this case, I want to take a look at both the polygons and the lines in my parcel edit token. And then we're going to get the points layer as well. So now what I'm basically doing is I'm gathering up all of the feature layers with whose edits I want to see who are affected by this build operation. Continue on, get through that here. Same thing we saw before, we have our parcel edit token. We were building by record, so we got this token here. And then we can see we have a feature set created, which we have point features that were created during the build to represent our line endings. And now we also have features that were modified. And then we're going from a seed to a full parcel, which is essentially an attribute update. So we're going to have some modified features as well. And this time I will loop through them and do some calculations here. What I'm going to do for every polygon, for every tax parcel, basically, I'm going to update the name field with a specific thing. I'm going to give it the name and just append some strings to it. And then we'll also get the count back as well. Yep, so there are nine seeds were promoted to full parcels, and then we have 4 new points that were added through here. And then we look over here and the selected features, we can see we had the name string, which is the object ID with a string attached to it. So we can update we have some kind of algorithm for parcel naming, and we can apply that there as well. So in these situations where new parcels are added on top of existing parcels, we see here I have this one large parcel, which is a tax parcel, on top of all my new ones that we just created. So what we'll need to do is clip those out of the underlying parcel, leaving both the new parcels and then the remainder of the original parcel. So this can be done using the standard clip tool, but in a parcel remainder workflow, it may make more sense to consolidate clips, setup, and execution. Sure, I have everybody selected here. And you're not selected. So we'll run this create remainder add-in here. Again, all the same stuff, making sure we have the active record, get access to our feature layers. So what I need is the feature layer of my source tax parcel type. That's they're both going to be the same essentially. So we'll make 2 variables out of that. And what I want to make sure I'm doing, let's see, I can move it. There we go. Okay, cool. So I'm going to want to make sure that the features that I'm selecting are in the current record. I want only the ones that are in the associated with that record that we created. Get through that. And so what I want to do is take the geometry of those new parcels that I created, and I want to union them together to essentially make a cookie cutter. So I'm going to use that union geometry as my cookie cutter to press into that bottom parcel. And to do that, we want to select all of this part here. I'll just jump down to it. So we have our union. Oh, and the other thing I wanted to mention too is we'll have a small slight tolerance to make it a little bit smaller, because this cookie cutter essentially is going to be put through the spatial filter. So it's going to be slightly smaller so it doesn't grab anything extra on the outside. We'll have that geometry here, that is our union geometry. Skip down here. And then I'm going to select everything that intersects that union geometry that is not in this record. So it's going to be essentially the dough that I'm going to press into. And so we'll make sure we have all that set, loop through and find all the features and get their object IDs. And we'll set up the edit operation again, and this one's going to be for clip, passing in the target feature layer, the object IDs that we need, that union geometry, and then we want to set it to discard the area. So discard what we pull out from that larger parcel. Continue on. There it goes. Okay, cool. So yeah, so we kind of gave it away a little bit, but now we see that we have our new parcel set, and I no longer have anything under there, and all I'm left with is the remainder of that larger parcel. So now that our record-driven workflow is finished here, as far as parcel editing goes, the next step is to post the changes to the default version. Again, we've been working in this branch version here. So if we know that everything is ready to go, all the edits have been verified, we can now reconcile and post to the branch version. So one of the bonuses, or some of the bonuses of using the SDK to reconcile, is the ability to combine reconcile and post into one button. You don't have to do it twice. If you know it, you're going to have the same options every time. You can put this into one function. And the other thing we get too is the ability to use Pro, or use the UI, to reconcile asynchronously. If we used the versioning reconcile here, the button itself will, out of the box is going to reconcile synchronously, meaning it's going to block. We can set up our own button to reconcile asynchronously. I'll show you how that's done here. Or a breakpoint set. Okay, cool. We'll go to reconcile and post. The same thing we saw when we created the version, we get the data store, convert that to a geodatabase, making sure that we're not in default because we can't reconcile default. We know that we've set a version. So here we get to set up our reconcile options. The same things you're going to see in both the UI and if you're using the geoprocessing tool, but we can set them up here. We're going to reconcile by column. If we run into conflicts, we want to make sure that we bail out in this case, or you can just set it to resolve in favor of whichever version you want. I was going to try to show the other resolution methods, but it's debugging. We can go through that later if we need to. But here we go. We can set the synchronization type. I have it set to synchronous, but we can set that to asynchronous as well. If you know you have a large amount of edits to reconcile, set that to asynchronous, and it won't block you. And it should, hopefully not take longer than 10 minutes, but should avoid timeout issues as well. So as I mentioned, we can reconcile and post at the same time. So what we can do here is set up our post options. We can set that to be asynchronous as well. And then we can call reconcile, passing in both the reconcile options and the post options. And that will do both at the same time, or both one after the other. And if we have conflicts, we'll jump out of there. And then in here, I'm just changing the version back to default so we can see our changes. So we'll continue. Oh, conflicts detected. Oh yeah, that's right. Well, that's actually good. I was testing the conflict detection and I left it in there. So anyway, oops, no. So what we would have seen if I didn't have my test data in there, sorry about that, is the default version. It would post to the default version, and we now have access to our edits here. So yeah, so what we've seen here is a record-driven workflow, how to use a parcel record, how to combine processes, querying a database to pull attribute information, and then the full versioning workflow of creating a version, doing the edits, and then reconciling and posting. So yeah, so that's all I have for this demo. I'll give it back to Tim.
Hey, Ken, quick question. So the history is there, right? So when you did the remainder.
Oh, yeah. Right. We turn on historic parcels. We still have this large underlying parcel. It never actually went away. It was just now marked as historic. It now had its retired by record populated. So for
that's the parcel behavior that occurred because we had to have an active record in the heads-up display.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. If I didn't have this, I could still do the clip operation, but I wouldn't have the lineage maintained. That parcel would actually just be deleted.
Cool. Thanks, Ken.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'm going to try to show my screen here. You see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So I'm just going to go through this new concept for parcel edges, and it's basically a way to describe the relationships between the parcel boundaries and the parcel itself. And this allows us to navigate between these elements of the parcel, so moving from one line to the next in a clockwise sequence, and also getting back the points. And this is important because it allows us to build a traverse We know that we need to, when we're creating a traverse using bearings and distances on the lines, we need to go in a sequence to form a closed loop that goes around that parcel, and that gives us the ability to calculate a disclosure and calculate the COGO area. And then also this gives us the ability to do things like report parcel characteristics, such as those misclosing areas. So I'll show some of this here, but first let's talk about the concepts. So what do we mean by a parcel edge? Really, we're just talking about a way to look at the parcel polygon's shape and determine where we have segments that are tangent to one another. And where we have a sequence of tangent segments, this defines a parcel edge. So from a customer's or user's point of view, these internal vertices here, I call them internal, where there is no band point, they don't really have much of a meaning, and they are introduced usually when we have a topology and we have other features that intersect these segments, and then when we validate, these vertices are introduced. But that's just a system thing. It's just used for the topology itself. But from a user's point of view, there is just a single edge. And in this particular polygon, we only have 4 edges, one from here to here, one from here to here, and one from here, so on. So, and similarly with the circular arc, here we have 2 edges on this east side of this parcel polygon. We have this edge for this single segment, and then where we start curving to in the other direction, we have a single parcel edge, and it's just a single edge because all of these segments are tangent to one another and they all have the same radius. So that's kind of the high level definition of what we mean by a parcel edge. Now, the other thing we want to be able to do is define a sequence. So when we're looking at these edges, we can say that we can give through the API, we can specify a starting point. So we can say, close to this particular location, give me back the parcel edges. And we can specify where we want to start. And then we have indexing on the edges. So we have edge 1, edge 2, edge 3, edge 4 going in a clockwise sequence. There are 2 high-level types of line-to-edge relationships. We have enumerations and booleans, and you can think of these as kind of qualitative relationships. But then there's also quantitative relationships, and these are the geometries themselves. How does the geometry relate to each of the parcel edges? And when I'm talking about the geometry, I'm talking about the geometries of the lines in relation to the geometry of the edges. So here's some examples of some qualitative relationships. We have an enumeration where we can say the start vertex of a line matches the end of an edge. And it's one example, and there's other 3 here as well. And then there are booleans as well. So we can say, is the line that is on a particular edge, is it flowing in the same clockwise direction as the edge, or is it oriented in the opposite direction? So that means this, and if it is, then is reverse returns true. And then has next line connectivity. This means that for a particular parcel boundary line, is there another parcel boundary line that is attached at its end? And you can see this is what I'm describing is sort of the way that we can think about a traverse. And the reason that we need this is because in the Parcel Fabric model, we have different ways that lines relate to edges. So here, in this particular case, we have edge 2. We have a start down here, so we have edge 1 on the dashed line that's representing the parcel polygon, and then we have edge 2. And we have 3 lines here. They are all stacked one on top of each other. and we need to separate them out. So this is just conceptual, of course. I'm just splitting them out so you can kind of see what those lines look like. And you can see that we have A that fully covers that parcel edge 2. But then we have this boundary line B that is kind of partially covering over that northern edge. And then same thing for the boundary line C. And you can see already that if we were to try to do a traverse for this particular parcel, lines B and C aren't really of much value to us in that particular scenario. We can use these parcel line to edge relationships for all sorts of other types of things through the API. But if in my example, I want to create a traverse, then I will need to filter out lines C and B because they're not of value to me. I only want the bearings and distances on line A. So here's an example of the qualitative line to edge relationship. So we can see for the blue dashed line, which is the edge, the start vertex of the boundary line feature, it matches an edge end. You can see that's highlighted with green. And also for this line over here, we can see that it also has a start vertex that matches an edge at the end of the edge. And then, so we can also determine if the orientation of the line, how it relates to that edge. And remembering that we're always looking at the edges in a clockwise sequence, we can see that the line direction is also clockwise. So we can see that from the arrow here on the line, we can see that it is following in the same clockwise orientation as the edge. Of course, if it were going the other way, like in B here, that line direction would not be true. It would be going in the reverse direction. So those are some of the examples of the qualitative relationships. We also have geometry relationships in quantitative sense. And so for this, we're really talking about the length, the proportions of the lengths of the line. So if we take an edge and we say that it has a 0 is its start point and 1 is its end point, then if we look at these other lines, we can see that for line B, its start point relationship over here has a value of proportionally 2.349, something like that, right? Because we're saying that if 0 to 1 is the edge, then this line B is hanging off the end of that edge by this factor, 2.349. And in the case of this line that's going the other direction, because we're going in a clockwise sequence, this is now negative. So we have a negative 1.349 for line C in terms of its geometry relationship in proportion to that edge. So all of this is basically describing the information for parcel boundaries in relationship to the parcel polygon, and gives us through the API the capability to do all sorts of things. So if, for example, I wanted to create an add-in that selected lines that look like C and B here, then I would be able to write an add-in that did that for me, and so on. And here's another example. So here we have 3 lines again stacked. We have this line that goes all the way from north to south here, and then we have these 2 lines that are kind of sitting on top of that existing line there. And this might be for a backlot, for example. And we can see that its position here for B, it has at its endpoint, it has a proportion of 0.499, nearly 5, nearly halfway down that edge. And so there is a lot of help on this topic. I'm just going to click on the link here. And if we go to this link, we can show us information at the end. You can see that there's a full description of how to use these relationships, including source code and so on. These are just the more detailed information that I've just gone through in these slides. So all of this information is available here, including the ability to detect natural boundaries. So in other words, where we have a single feature that is a polyline that goes along the edge of a parcel polygon, you can see that is a different way to look at the relationship between the edges and the parcel boundaries. And that information is all there as well. So here's a look at the code. We have this new method called the getSequenced Parcel Edge Info Async. And it returns a parcel edge collection object. And you pass in the parcel layer. This is parcel layer here represents the parcel polygon for the particular parcel type. Then the object ID of that parcel, and then the hint start point. So it doesn't have to be the exact starting point because you don't necessarily know that, but you can give it an approximate starting point. So it will just go to the nearest edge that is close to that point, and then start the clockwise sequence from that position. And then there's a tangency tolerance. This I typically set at about 3 centimeters. And all this is doing is it's telling us how to identify bends. So we need to know how far off a particular vertex needs to be from its neighboring segments before we decide if it's tangent or not. And then there's a set of parcel line to edge relationships. And these allow us to filter out and get back only those boundary lines that make sense for our particular requirements for our custom tool. And you'll see here are some of those same qualitative relationships here on those relationships. Once we have the parcel edge collection object, we can get back its set of the actual edges themselves from the whole collection. And for each of the edges, we can get back line information. So you can see here we have, for this particular edge line information, we're getting the lines at the first edge. And then we're going to see what kind of information do we have for each of these lines. And for example, in this case, I'm checking to see if the line is reversed compared to the clockwise orientation of this particular parcel. Okay, so let's go out and do a demo and show how this can be used. So here I have some data from Harris Central Appraisal District in the Houston area. And I'm going to start out by just describing some of this data here. So we have a set of parcels here, and anywhere where we have parcels that have a misclose, we have a miscloses layer that is indicating that. And then any lines that have bad COGO attributes, distances comparing the geometry to the actual attribute, is highlighted in this orange line. I'm going to click the miscloses button to take us to one of these. And something new that came in with 3.1 is the ability to, this is outside of Parcel API, this is just editing API, is the ability to create your own custom tab. So I'm leveraging that here to make a parcel report for this particular parcel. And here you can see that we have our misclose ratio, we have a COGO area, and then a misclose distance, and we see that we're misclosing here by just over ½ a foot. And then for that line where the geometry doesn't match the COGO attribute, we've highlighted that here in yellow and red text. And we want to be able to see what's going on, so I've got a little button here that allows me to turn on the scanned image, and we can take a look and we can see here that that 115.29 that's stored in the database should really be 115.92. So in my custom tab here, I can go in and change that value. And then you'll note that as soon as I made that change, our parcel report updated with the new information. It's recalculated the misclose and area. And not only has it done it for this parcel 30, it did it for this parcel 29 too. Because as you're aware, in the parcel model, we have a shared line model. So this single line is shared by both of these parcels. And so both of those miscloses and areas were updated. And let's just to show you some other examples of how this can be used. Here we have this utilities add-in. This I've just recently updated this morning, so I've added some new features, and that's represented by this export button. We can export a selected set of parcels to a Travis file or to a parcel report. Ken already showed the create remainder tool, and the update misclose area that was there from before, so you may already be aware of it. But there's also a parcel report tool, so let's just take a look at that. And this is giving an example of how we can use that hint point. So where I clicked was kind of a hint point, but it's going to go straight to this point because that's the closest one. And you can see that it's going 115.92 was that line, 40.37. And then here you'll see that we have some overlapping lines here. We have 50.83 and 60.33 for this backlot. But really what we want is this 115.15, and it's able to detect that. And that's because I'm using those relationships that are available through those parcel edge concepts. And you can see, because we clicked here as a start point, we went clockwise all the way around, and then our circular arc is the last one on the list. If I change that and I click over here instead, you can see that our clockwise lines starting with a circular arc. Now, the other thing to note is because we have a shared line model, we want to be able to flip these lines. So when I'm calculating the traverse for this 29, this south 490603 east has to be reversed to northwest, and you can see that that's what's been done here. And also it's indicated as clockwise lines, so we know what we're doing here. So we've actually taken the attributed value and then just added 180 to it to go in the clockwise sequence to give us that. So I'm going to select these two parcels and then go export to parcel report, choose my folder, and go take a look. And you can see here, this is a sort of custom report that I was referring to earlier in the slides, where we can use that API to generate the traverse, to get the name of the parcel, get the record, number of lines, and so on, ground area, map area, differences between those two, difference between the attributed length and the adjusted length, misclosures, and then the residuals for the traverse. So that's an example of what you're able to do in terms of customization of exporting to a parcel report. And then we can also do a traverse. So this is just an ArcMap traverse format. So if we export that out to Bridgeland, we can see that we have our two traverse files here. So I'm going to reset here and start over and hit some breakpoints so we can take a look at some of the code. First thing I did is I hit the misclosures button that selects our parcel. And this is not parcel API specific. This is just the editing API that I referred to before with the new ability at 3.1 to create our custom tab. And here we just need to confirm that we are looking at a parcel in a Parcel Fabric, and then that allows us to display the tab. If it was some other feature that was selected that was not a parcel in the Parcel Fabric, then we wouldn't show that tab at all. And here you can see that our Parcel Report tab is shown because we have a parcel selected. So I'm going to select and then click on the Parcel Report tab. This takes us to our next breakpoint, and this is for the get sequence parcel edge info async method. And as described before, this is the layer for the Parcel Fab, or for the parcel type. This represents the polygon parcel, or the polygon layer for the parcel type that I'm interested in getting this report on. And this is the parcel object ID, the hint start point again, the tangent tolerance. And now what we're going to do is take that parcel edge collection for traverses, that's the name of the variable that I used, and we're going to display the traverse calculation disclosure. So this is doing the analysis on those edges and getting back the information that makes sense for us to do an actual traverse. So you can see here I'm using all of those different types of relationships for the lines, like the imposition on the parcel edge is greater than 1 or less than 0. Those are referring to those lines before where we had kind of, they didn't make any sense for actually doing a traverse. So you can see here that I'm skipping those by just continuing in the loop, and I'm just going to skip those. We don't want to deal with those. And then similarly for these methods, these are kind of a similar thing where we might have lines that are not that are hanging off the edge of the edge, or hanging off the edge of the parcel edge. So we want to skip those as well. And then we're going to do we're here in the compass rule adjustment method. So here we're just going to do a compass adjust, and we're also calculating the area here. So we need to be aware of the circular arc segment because we want to be able to add or subtract the little half moon of the arc segment for the actual area, because we know that if we're going in the clockwise direction and it's curving to the left, then we're going to have to subtract that arc segment, and the other way around, if we're curving to the right, it's going to kind of create a bulge where we need to add that arc segment into the area calculations. So that's what this is. And so we're adding to the area segment to the running sum over here. And here we have that information as before. So now I'm going to do that edit that I did before, change the 115.2.29 to 115.92, hit enter. And in this case now we are, we are on the parcel property change. We're going to go in and getting the parcels affected. So we know that we have this shared line model. So we know that we're going to have more than one parcel affected by this line. So what we're doing here is we're using the geometry API, and we're going halfway along the line, getting its midpoint. Let's see here. And then we're buffering, first of all, we're buffering the line by 1 foot. And then we're getting the centroid of that thin buffer polygon, of that buffered line. And then we're using that centroid and buffering it by a 1 foot. So in other words, we have a little search geometry as a 1 foot circle midway along the line. And then we can use that as a spatial query to get back all of the polygons that are that covered by that intersect that little 1 foot circle. And in this case, we're going to get back 2 list of OIDs, should be 2 here. Let's see. Yep, so we have those 2 parcels. And then we're going to start setting up to update the misclosing area. So for this, we have an edit operation. We're going to create a new edit operation. And then you'll notice here that we have a second edit operation, and we're going to pass in the edit operation 1 into this function update line and misclose area. And we're going to create a chained edit operation. What do we mean by that? The chained edit operation allows us to do multiple edits within a single operation. So we don't want to have the user hit undo multiple times, once for the changing of the distance, and then once again for the changing of the misclosing area for both parcels and so on. So we want to be able to combine all those into a single operation. So we doing that here with this chained operation, and we should see that in our next breakpoint. So here we are creating the chained edit operation. So we say edit operation 2, we've come in, we brought that edit operation 1 into this function, and we're saying edit operation 2, create a chained edit operation from that edit operation, the first edit operation. And then we're going to do all of our edits. You can see here we're using the same get sequence parcel edge info async again. And then we're going to do our compass rule again. And then here we are updating the misclosing area parcels that share the line. You can see that we're adding our parcel attributes to adding the attributes for misclose ratio, misclose distance. Those we know because of our schema, we know that those fields exist because we're working with a fabric. We don't need to test for them. That's one of the ways that we can leverage the schema. We know that we have certain fields there. And that's the first one. I'm going to do the second one now. That's a second parcel. And here we can see that we've made those edits as before. And to show that that is a single edit operation, change value for line distances. You can see that with that single operation, we did all of those edits in one shot. I'm going to redo that again. And I think that is it from me, except we do have some more slides to go through. For resources and so on. So for the resources, I did show you the concepts page. We also have snippets, and you can easily access those from that same concepts page. You'll see there's a link to the right. And I'll share these in the chat also, these links. And then the content, the slides, you can, well, not these exact slides, there's the slides that we did at the Dev Summit that Ken and I did there, have a lot more of some of the data model and that sort of thing. And this session today went into more detail on versioning, as Ken showed, and also more detail on the parcel edges concepts. But for that other information about some of the older information, like the parcel data model and using the API to do other sorts of things like creating parcel types, and also Kogo information, you can go to this link and get all of the source code there as well. And that is it, I think. Do we have any questions or anything?
There is actually two. You just answered one, which was where can I get the code? So that was the GitHub, perfect. The other one was from Kurt Nielsen, and he said when Ken was doing his demonstration, he was asking at what point in the code does the stated area get calculated?
Yeah, the stated area gets calculated on a build when we build the parcels in the Parcel Fabric.
Yeah.
So you can shrink to seed. So if you don't have, for some reason, if you've done a load of your data and you don't have misclose area and stated area and so on, you can shrink to seeds and then build, and that should update that information for you. Or you can write an add-in to do it, like I showed here.
Another quick update on the reconcile and post. I went back while you were doing your demo, and I didn't actually have a conflict. I hadn't saved my edits, and I was just returning I wasn't returning that error message. So all I had to do was save my edits and post would have worked.
Do you want to show it?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, it's already set up, ready to go.
I'll stop sharing.
Just take a second.
That'll also give me a chance to put some of these links in the chat.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, cool. You see the screen?
Yep.
Okay, because it's showing red on over here. Anyway, so I went through it again, and you see up in here, I still have the edits. I haven't saved yet, and so there's actually I guess it's a bug, but it's just about the messaging when there actually are conflicts. The error message isn't getting reported back correctly. It's a kind of a weird error. So I was kind of hiding that, just putting in what I expected it to be if I had conflicts. If I don't have conflicts in this case, I have edits, you see up here. And then so if we look at the actual exception, the message is it can't be invoked inside Jude is also a weird one, but basically means that I have to save my edits. So if I save, so it'll give me the error. We know that's wrong. If I save the edits and then reconcile the post again, oh yeah, I was breaking. So now it'll change the version to default. I can see that my edits are in there. I didn't do the create remainder, but my built parcels are there now. So yeah, that was all it was. It wasn't handling the error message correctly.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ken.
Yeah.
Any other questions or from anyone, or for the people who put other in there for the reasons that they write add-ins? Do you have any further info on what those types of tasks might be? That'd be great if you could put those in the chat as well. Otherwise, we've ended about 15 minutes early. So thanks to everybody coming, appreciate it. And update us on all your new add-ins and customizations that you're creating.
Yep, and then we'll have this meetup recording out on our community site probably by tomorrow.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good day.